When you marry a woman still in love with her ex, you become a visitor in a story that was never truly yours. This couple has been happily married for 3 years, facing life together without any issues. They met online through a popular social media trend that appears to link many single women with their ideal husbands. The man married the woman just a few months after their profiles matched, believing it was a divine connection, and made no effort to investigate her background before the wedding. Suddenly, the door bursts open and a masked armed man storms into the house, ordering the couple to get on their knees and surrender without hesitation. Despite the tension, the husband stays calm, cautiously positioning his wife beside him to shield her as they both kneel to the ground. He urgently begs the armed man to take anything he wants, but to please leave his beloved wife unharmed. In the presence of threat, the man who begs for his wife's safety first is already a hero. The armed man commands the husband to stay down, then strides toward the wife, his voice sharp and forceful, as he orders her to stand up and follow him to search the house. Trembling with fear, the lady rises and follows the armed man into the house, while her husband stays on the floor, powerless to intervene. Frightened and trembling, the woman steps into the bedroom with the armed man right behind her. She drops to her knees beside the bed, begging the armed man to take whatever he wants from the room. The man tears off his mask, and the woman gasps in disbelief as she realizes the armed intruder is her ex-boyfriend, the same man she's been secretly seeing behind her husband's back. Her ex-boyfriend had disguised himself just to confront her, desperate to know why she hadn't come to see him the past 2 weeks. These two have been entangled in a romantic affair since the very start of her marriage, with no plans or desire to bring it to an end. Aware that his visit stems from their lack of intimacy over the past 2 weeks, she surrenders to his desires, allowing it to happen on the very bed she shares with her husband. They both assume her husband will stay kneeling in fear, powerless and unaware, until they've had their secret moment. The husband becomes restless and concerned, sensing that his wife has been in the bedroom too long and fearing something might be wrong. He chooses to approach the bedroom slowly and cautiously, ready to confront the armed man and protect his wife. To his shock, he hears not cries of fear, but soft moans of passion. Slowly, he opens the door and finds his wife in their bed with the armed man. In a matter of seconds, what began as an armed robbery quickly turned into a shocking act of adultery on the man's matrimonial bed, even with him still inside the house. He struggled to accept that the woman he cherished enough to sacrifice everything for could betray him so deeply on their own matrimonial bed. This man watched his world crumble before him, unable to find words to express the depth of his heartbreak. Without confronting his wife, he silently returns to the sitting room, staying where they believe he will be. You can't honor your marriage if your heart is still tied to your ex. The man sits quietly in the living room, haunted by questions, trying to understand what he might have done to deserve such a painful and humiliating betrayal from the woman he loved. Filled with unanswered questions and heartache from what he just witnessed, he slowly drops back to his knees, resuming the very position he was in, waiting silently for their return. The moment he was satisfied, she pushed him off her body, and in that instant, the weight of her actions hit her. She realized she had made a terrible mistake. She starts to panic and urgently asks her ex how he plans to leave the house without her husband realizing what happened between them. He tells her to stay calm, revealing that he has a plan to exit the house in disguise, just like when he came in. He instructs her to stick to the plan, grabs his machete, and they both exit the room, her face masked in fake fear and panic as they rejoin her husband. They both walk into the sitting room, and the lady immediately drops to her knees, still pretending, trying to convince her husband that they're still in the middle of a robbery. Neither of them realizes that the husband has uncovered their secret, his silence not from ignorance, but from the paralyzing shock of betrayal. A man betrayed may go quiet, not because he doesn't wonder, but because he knows the answers won't heal him. The ex continues to intimidate the husband, aiming to convince him that it's just a robbery, hoping to mask the time he secretly spent with the wife. He quickly exits the house, confident he's fooled the husband into believing it was just a robbery, while the lady hurriedly locks the door behind him. Unfaithfulness may appear as a trophy in marriage, but it's a victory claimed only by a fool. Still playing her part, the lady clings to her husband in a desperate search for comfort, but he turns away, refusing to respond. The woman he once adored has become nothing more than a tattered, forgotten cloth in his eyes, something he no longer cares for or desires.
VJ Rex Fashions presents The Power of Style, tailored to define greatness, built for leaders, dreamers, and men of purpose. Style like a Senator, dress like royalty, only at VJ Rex Fashions.
That same night, while his wife rests beside him, he stays awake on the bed, sullied by her betrayal, burdened by the weight of the decisions he must make about their marriage. Since discovering the truth of her betrayal, he has refused to speak to her about it or anything else, leaving her lost and confused in the heavy silence between them. He harshly pulls her hands away from his body, and she jolts awake, startled to realize he hasn't been asleep. She quietly asks why he's still awake so late, but he ignores her and pulls away from every attempt she makes to touch him. She's deeply unsettled by how her husband's behavior has changed so abruptly since the robbery. In their 3 years of marriage, she has never seen her husband so cold and distant, and it frightens her, making her wonder if he might have witnessed what happened in the room. A man may endure many trials in marriage, but not infidelity, because in his heart, and by the vows they made, his wife was meant to belong to him alone. She remains unaware that she's thrown away her marriage for an ex who once vowed to marry her, but never followed through. She continues to seek her husband's attention, attempting everything to break his silence, but he openly disregards her and turns away from all her efforts. She eventually gives up trying to reach him with words, and instead attempts to lure him by sensually moving on the bed, the very bed and body she has shown little respect for. A man's desire for a woman's body grows strongest when he knows he alone holds the key to it. 2 days later, the man sits on the couch, still stunned and speechless over the incident he witnessed. His wife walks in, dressed to go out, and sits beside him to start a conversation, but he instantly pulls away and resists her presence. From the day of the fake robbery, he has remained completely silent, choosing to let his silence speak louder than any confrontation. The lady suspects he knows what truly happened on the day of the robbery, yet she's confused by his silence and the fact that he hasn't asked a single question. She accuses him of drinking too much alcohol and losing himself in worrying, hoping to provoke a response, but he remains silent and unbothered. Silence may be golden, but often it leaves behind a trail of unanswered questions and quiet torment. After all attempts to get him to speak fail, the wife resorts once again to using her body in a bid to capture his attention. She shamelessly stands, flaunting her new clothes and body, but he once again turns away, ignoring her completely. She approaches him and attempts to kiss him, but he quickly pushes her away. She grabs her handbag in frustration and storms out of the house. A single act of unfaithfulness can undo years of love and trust in an instant. The ex-boyfriend, lying on the bed, hears a knock at the door and eagerly gets up to open it. He opens the door, and the lady steps inside hesitantly. He immediately hugs and kisses her from behind as they move to the bed. This is the same woman her husband is angry with, yet she still seeks comfort from the very man who stay in their marriage bed. Respect for others' marriages is the true measure of a man's integrity. The lady suddenly halts their intimacy to tell him about her husband's cold and distant behavior since the robbery. She tells him she has reasons to believe her husband might have witnessed their intimacy during the robbery. Her ex, stubbornly refusing to accept they were discovered, tries to reassure her that her husband's distant behavior is merely a result of the robbery's trauma and nothing more. He attempts to draw her focus back to him to continue their romance, the purpose of her visit, but she rejects his advances. Noticing her unease over her husband's doubts, he reassures her confidently that he will handle the situation. He pulls her near and tries to kiss her, but she stays cold and unresponsive, still troubled by thoughts of her husband. He softly promises to handle everything and bring peace back to her marriage, and gradually, she begins to let down her guard. He whispers tender promises into her ear, tracing gentle patterns on her skin, until the weight of her worries starts to lift, and she surrenders to the warmth of his touch. The man remains seated on the couch. His wife comes back from visiting her ex-boyfriend. She tries once more to catch her husband's attention, but he rejects her efforts again. She takes a seat next to him on the couch and makes another effort to kiss him, but he refuses her once again. The man is deeply upset after catching his wife with another man in their bed, unaware that she has just returned from yet another encounter with the same man. Cheating on your partner doesn't prove intelligence. It reveals a failure to guard the heart you once promised to protect. This lady thinks she's outsmarting her husband, unaware that she's already been written out of his heart and emotions. She persistently tries to draw him out of his silence, but he remains firm, not uttering a single word in response. When a man's heart and trust are shattered by his wife's betrayal, she struggles to catch even a glance from him again. The door suddenly swings open, and the ex steps inside, his face hidden behind a mask, disguised as an armed robber. He orders the man and his wife to kneel, but the man completely ignores him, acting as if he hasn't even noticed the intruder's presence. His wife is panicking as she follows the script he arranged with his ex, trying to convince her husband that it was a robbery, aiming to erase his initial memory of the event. The husband is fully aware they're in cahoots, and that this whole act is just a carefully staged performance to deceive him. The ex-boyfriend drops his matches onto the floor and shoves the man, trying to provoke him into responding. A fierce struggle breaks out as the ex forcefully shoves the man onto the couch and wraps his hands around his neck, tightening his grip in a violent chokehold. The wife stays in her act, convinced this charade will erase the past, completely unaware that her husband is being strangled right beside her. Her ex notices the man has suddenly gone cold and silent, and quickly realizes that he has strangled him to death. His wife immediately struggles against her ex, accusing him of murdering her husband. He quickly shoves her away and rushes out of the house. Her betrayal became the cause of her husband's tragic end. This is a lesson to everyone. Infidelity destroys not just love but lives. Emotional betrayal can be as deadly as physical harm. Silence can hide deep wounds but not heal them. Communication is key to resolving marital issues. Actions have consequences that can't always be undone. Thank you for watching this video. Please share this video and comment where you are watching from.